What if I told you that the future of medicine is actually millions of years old? That the answers to some of the world's most vexing healthcare problems are found in the plants, trees, and fungi all around us. I'm Joel Stanley, CEO of BioSciences, and I'm here to share a vision for the future of drug development that will revolutionize healthcare globally. By partnering modern technology with the ancient wisdom found in nature, we are pioneering botanical drugs. My family and team found our first botanical solution at Charlotte's Web, where the revolutionary success story of Charlotte Figge and thousands of other children using cannabinoid therapy showed us for the first time how powerful plant medicine can really be.
All right, that is Ajna Bioscience. Joel, how's it going?
Going well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, cannabinoids is something that I've learned a lot about because we have our cannabis business on Benzinga. So I'm excited to see and hear what you've got to say, man. You know the rules, 10 minutes. First 2 minutes is for your pitch. The floor is all yours.
All right. Well, botanical medicines have been used and trusted for centuries, yet we left them completely behind in the modern pharmaceutical industry. That's not because they're not efficacious, because many plants are highly efficacious, as we saw in the video. It's really because they're difficult to standardize. So we built Ajna Biosciences specifically to crack the code and bring botanical drugs through the FDA and into the medical ecosystem really for the first time. Now, standardizing nature into a pharmaceutical grade drug is not an easy task. So we've assembled really a world-class team and special infrastructure to accomplish this. We have some of the world's top scientists and regulatory experts, as well as some pharmaceutical veterans that have multiple FDA approvals under their belt, really double-digit approvals. I myself and our management team have a track record of raising hundreds of millions of dollars and bringing a company to a very successful IPO. Now, botanical drug development is not just a vision for the future. This is a vision we're executing on and have been for over 3 years. We've raised over $26 million, custom built a laboratory to do this. We've secured a DEA Schedule I manufacturing license so we can work with the very important psychedelics, and we're advancing our first drugs through human clinical trials presently. The first drug in the pipeline is a full spectrum cannabinoid formulation for autism spectrum disorder. We've completed phase 1 and moving into phase 2 for that drug. The second drug in the pipeline is a full spectrum psilocybin daily microdose that we believe is a better alternative to the current antidepressants that are on the market today. Now, as consumer demand rises for more natural, more sustainable healthcare options, Ajna is really poised to be a major disruptor in a synthetic pharmaceutical industry that did over $678 billion last year. By investing in Ajna, really people are backing a world-class team, creating a very important paradigm shift within medicine. For the first time, we're empowering patients and physicians with a new choice, simply by choosing to partner with nature backed by science.
So I come from the world of hospice. I love hospice. It's a weird thing to say. It's death and dying. But at end of life, we're aiming to get people comfortable. And luckily, I was in California at the cutting edge of marijuana, becoming legal. And we used cannabis. We used marijuana for many of our patients to get them comfortable at the end of life. So I love this space and I love kind of where we're exploring with it. But I also know that there's a lot of regulatory risk and hurdles that you have to come over. We just saw MDMA. They didn't necessarily outright reject it, but the FDA has kind of put up some roadblocks with getting MDMA treatments approved. How do you see the government over the next 10 years really working with you because the psilocybin is kind of the piece that I'm the most curious about as you're getting these drugs to market. Can you talk about that process?
Sure. So, this shouldn't be confused with a state legal clinic or state legal dispensary. This is federally legal FDA drug process, right? We have DEA Schedule I licensing. So that's the first piece. And because we're a botanical drug, a lot of people don't understand, only 4 botanical drugs have been approved by the FDA because the regulatory framework is actually very new, but it is happening.
Okay.
So I believe that not only do people want more natural medicines, but the FDA has been calling for botanical drug developers to exist. And I believe we built the first of its kind. Now, as far as the controversy of cannabinoids or psilocybin, I think that the world is waking up. But what we see in the regulatory paradigm, and I think you bring up Lycos and MDMA, I think it's actually a good sign that the FDA is taking the drug seriously, that they're not going to outright reject it. They've hit a roadblock. And kudos to them for pioneering. But what I'll say about our psilocybin candidate is because it's a microdose, we don't face the same problems associated with the assisted therapy side, which that's the first time this has really been done, or this problem of placebo control. Our psilocybin drug really has a roadmap that's more like a conventional antidepressant. So we don't anticipate the same problems.
Okay. Follow-up question on that. Pharmaceutical companies, you know this, spend billions of dollars, at least the largest ones, on R&D, years to go to market, and then they get a lot of flack for the prices they charge for drugs, but that's really the way that they're recouping that 10-year plus investment. Why are you deciding to raise through this sort of platform? Why not go to some of the larger pharmaceuticals, or I don't know, some of the larger venture capital or private equity funds? Like, why do this as like a crowdsourced fundraise as opposed to a more traditional fundraise?
I think that's a great question and happy to answer it. So one, we are going to institutional investors. As I mentioned, we have raised over 26 million for this project to date, including 15 million from BAT. This is an $80 billion Fortune 500 company that is backing the first drug. So that's huge. We are highly institutionally backed. Why Regulation CF community fundraising? Well, when I IPO'd Charlotte's Web, I was the first CEO there and took it through its IPO. Back then, I couldn't allow friends, family, and even people using Charlotte's Web, using the product to invest if they weren't, quote, accredited. So Reg CF to me is a democratized opportunity for early stage investment. People can invest as little as $250. So it's not the only way we're raising, but I'm very excited to raise this way. Now, if I get an institution that comes in and gives us all the money we need for, this and that phase, and they say, we don't want you to do it, I'm going to have to listen to them probably.
Sure.
But I really hope every raise we do as we go into Series A, this is Series C, as we go into Series A and Series B, that we keep this democratized opportunity long before IPO, right? So I love it when normal people, my community, can really take the ride with us, and that's why we're doing it.
Cool. Chris,
Joel, I think, one of the most impressive things about your fundraise is the success that you and your team had with Charlotte's Web, because it's so directly related to what you're doing today. I'm curious what challenges you expect to face with Anja that you didn't have to face with Charlotte's Web. What's going to be harder about this than what you've already done?
Many parts of it are actually easier because we're moving through an established regulatory paradigm. Keep in mind, Charlotte's Web it was such an honor to get to be a part of, such a phenomenal story, multiple documentaries. But Charlotte's Web is still stuck in a regulatory gray area with CBD. The FDA has not regulated it yet. The only CBD drug that's actually been approved by the FDA 5 years after Charlotte's Web came on the market is called Epidiolex. Epidiolex does over $1 billion gross annually, even though we had a 5-year head start. Charlotte's Web now does around 70 million. I believe they have the best gummies. They have the highest quality control, best brand on the market. They do around 70 million annual, whereas this one drug that got approved does over $1 billion. So that's a part of what we learned at Charlotte's Web is when you're making an efficacious medicine, yes, it's hard to do drug development. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's the right path for the medicine. So I don't anticipate the same kinds of roadblocks. We don't have any trouble with banking. We're federally legal. Charlotte's Web was a nightmare in so many ways, although it was such a beautiful thing to be a part of. This, we're really going through established channels to bring these drugs to bear.
Talk about how far are you from monetizing? I mean, it sounds like you're in the trials right now. When will you get to the point where you're actually able to charge for this drug?
Right. The drug approval process is a very long process, and we've built really a botanical drug development platform, really first of its kind. There are drug development platforms out there, conventional drugs, and what happens is your drug gains value in every stage. When you move into phase 1, you have a valuation bump for the drug. Phase 2, valuation bump. Phase 3, valuation bump. What happens is that drug development platforms like Ajna look for commercialization partners. Pfizer, Lilly, Jazz Pharma bought that drug I was talking about for $7.2 billion, right? Many of these drugs get majority purchased long before they're approved, and they get backed by either big pharma or institutionals that play in the space. So we anticipate seeing liquidity events, seeing revenue from the future royalty sales of the drugs long before they're approved.
Okay. What is that timeline? Is that like 6 months or is that 10 years for you?
When I talk about liquidity events, I'm very careful about it. We may very well IPO if the markets are right in the next 18 months to 2 years. That's a very common thing for biotech companies like ours that are moving into phase 2. But there are many different options for us. But I like to look at this as really, safely a 2 to 4 year investment. And I'm pretty upfront about that.
Cool.
Awesome. Sweet. Appreciate your time so much, Joel. A lot of good stuff for us to go over, and then we'll be in touch. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.